All right, so let's get into hatching and masking. So let me go to the floor plan sample here. And what do we do first? Let's do the hatching. So I'm gonna go to, I have 4 floors here. They're identical, generic family floor. And let's say in this particular view, maybe it's a floor plan, and I wanna show my client, maybe anything that's colored red is public space, and anything that's green is private space, and anything that blue is kind of storage. But I don't want to create all 4 floors. This is just for presentation, and I just want to show them a color, kind of like a color chart. And again, some of you guys, as you guys get better at Revit, there's a way of making area plans and all that other, stuff. But this is only so that I can describe to you what a hatching is, and also how to use a hatch. So when you guys go to annotate, again, annotate just simply means you're going to write over something. So think of it as you got a piece of paper and you want to draw on top of it, right? So you have 2 different things. You have this region fill, and then later on we're going to go to masking pattern. So region is kind of, well, I call it hatch because I'm from the AutoCAD world, and it used to be called hatching. It basically is, I'm going to just click it right now, and it allows you to draw any kind of shape. So I could come in here and draw really any shape. Normally I would kind of trace over a shape that I want to cover, but in this case I just want to show you guys. And it has to be a closed object, meaning it has to, imagine a fence, and it has to be a closed fence. And once you draw the area that you want to quote unquote hatch or fill, right here, I mean, you could also, by the way, change it after you click, but right here, you are telling Revit which pattern that you want this particular shape to be filled with. So I'm just going to go to this wood number 1. And by the way, these are all default patterns that came with the architectural template. And I click OK, and there it is. So I have a pattern here sitting on top of this. I'm going to do another one here. Normally when you do a region fill, you will fill a particular area, so you will fill this whole area. So you can again draw and trace over it, or simply use this pick line tool and then click that. And another like power user tip, if you hit the tab, it'll kind of like chain it, meaning loop it around, right? So anyway, and I'm going to fill that with wood number 1 again and click OK. And so now I have this pattern. But remember, it's an annotation similar to a detail line. Any region fill I do is only in this view. So again, it kind of acts like a detail line, but it's a pattern. So if I go to floor plan, the other complete copy of the floor plan, I wouldn't see those patterns because it only lives in this particular view, right? So that's a really, really important concept for you guys to understand. And once you've created a region fill or a hatch pattern, you can always select it and pick different types of patterns, right? So this is the way how you can communicate. When you see this shape in this drawing, this is what I mean. And when you see this pattern, this is what I mean, right? So again, we use these region fill and detail lines literally all the time in our construction documents, because the model alone is basically the shell of what you're trying to build, but you need to communicate many, many different ideas. And that's done through detail lines and hatch patterns describing what you mean when you say this and that. And if you notice on your modules, if you go back to the 04 Revit Families title block, I have a pattern link, and I actually have custom patterns, and I have a bunch of these patterns that I've collected throughout the years, and you guys are more than happy to use. Some of them are probably crappy, and some of them are going to be very useful. Unfortunately, there's no good way to preview these patterns, so you're just going to have to load them. Let me see if I can. Yeah, you're just going to have to load them and then see what those patterns look like. All right, but I have a bunch of these patterns for you. There is a difference between a drafting pattern and a model pattern, which let me show you. First, let's import a couple of these custom hatch patterns into your project. So we will go here and go to Edit Type. And then here's the pattern. So I'm going to come here and say I want a new pattern. And this is where you could kind of edit the patterns. So let's just go through this with number 1, and you go to this pencil tool, and let's see what kind of control it gives us. So it can give us a scale, meaning, let me move this off. Oops, you know what? So for instance, right now you can see this scale here. If I go to import scale 0.25, click OK, it should get much tighter. This, I'm going to apply. You see how the pattern got much tighter? So that's how you can kind of adjust the patterns. Now, they're not super customizable, but you know, you can edit them to a certain degree and level. All right, so let's go into importing one of our patterns. You can go to New and give it a name. So I'm going to just call it Sample Arc 62. And then you're going to go to Custom. And then you're going to browse to the folder that you downloaded the pattern files. In my case, I have it in my cloud. So I'm going to bring in one drafting pattern. I don't know which one. Let's just go to this 05. All right, I have no idea what that pattern is, but let's see, and then I might have to adjust the scale. So let's just try that, and I'm going to click OK and apply. Oh, maybe it's super small. Let's see. So obviously the pattern's kind of large, and it doesn't, hopefully this is not a disaster demo. So I'm going to come back here and make it smaller because it's obviously so large that I can't see it. Oh, so it's a bunch of these little triangles. Let's make it even smaller than that. So there you have it. So obviously, let me make this hatch much bigger so you can see more patterns here. And again, this is a pattern that lives in the annotate world, and it's only on this view. It doesn't show up on any other views. Another interesting thing is that you can see this hatch pattern is covering up, you know, anything that it goes over. And this is the second one I created, so it's on top of this one. But you could actually arrange these things, you know, to kind of shuffle them around. But you could also make them see-through. So if you look here, again, you go to Edit Type, and you see where it says Masking. You could just simply click that, and then you'll be able to see through it, okay? So I think this is a good time to transition into, here, I'm going to make a copy of this so that we can talk apples to apples. Difference between a pattern file that's made for drafting, scale, I guess. This is not, I don't want to confuse guys and say, well, if I use a model pattern that it acts as like a model line. In this example, the terminology is kind of used more as a scale, meaning drafting scale versus a model scale. And I know that sounds like super confusing, and it's even harder for me to explain, but maybe I can just show it to you. So this is a pattern, and I'm going to show you, let's see, let's go to Edit Type, and I'm going to change the pattern of that one. And if you look up here, it says draft pattern type drafting, and that's where we're at. And again, I have multiple patterns. Oop, I think I closed it. Well, you'll see it when you download it, but I have a pattern file called drafting pattern and model pattern. And again, they're not really interchangeable. There's ways of making a model pattern be a drafting pattern and vice versa, but I don't want to get into that. It gets a little bit, you got to edit it through text files and stuff. So, but in Revit, here is a model pattern. So I'm going to just use one of these 4-inch tiles, 4-inch example. And I'm going to apply it to this guy here. Oh, they're both applied. Oh, and oh, I made a rookie mistake. So look at what's happening here. What I did was, you see the type? That was that wood 1. It had that squiggly pattern. So basically by me changing this onto this type, anything that is wood 1 is going to give me this tile, 4-inch tile pattern. What I should have done was I should have duplicated it. So I'm going to do it this time. I'm going to say duplicate. And instead of calling it wood, I'm going to call it 4-inch model. So that way we know it's a model pattern. Okay. So that they're both actually, and then this one should be the wood. So it's still the wood. So this one I'm also going to make a duplicate and call it, I'm going to go 4-inch. I don't know if I can find a 4-inch grid detail, but we'll see. We'll try it. Detail. And then, of course, I'm not going to use the model, but I'm going to use a drafting. And I think I have this crosshatch. Maybe it needs to be a small one. All right, so this is a detail pattern, and this is a model pattern. What is the difference? So the difference really is in this view scale. So when I change this view scale, no matter what scale I change this to, this pattern shape is going to look the same, right? But this will change. So if I go to 1-inch scale, oh, I'm such a liar. I am sorry, it's the opposite. The detail lines change because in an inch scale, things get a lot more detail. So things are a lot finer and tighter. Whereas in the model, it's always, I told it to be 4 inches no matter what. So it always stays the same. So if I change this to a 16th inch now, completely opposite, you're going to see that this stays the same. The model pattern always stays whatever shape that it was drawn in, where the detail pattern is changing. As you change scale, its drawing scale also changes. So that's the kind of the fundamental difference between a model pattern and a detail pattern. And believe me, you're going to run across a situation where you wanted to change scales as you change scale. And then you're also going to run into a situation where you do not want to change scales no matter what. Okay. Again, this stuff might be a little bit advanced at the moment, you know, because we're really getting into like fine tuning how the drawing should look like, and are things printing at the right thickness and right scale or the right texture. But the more you guys get practice with this and make plenty of mistakes, you will definitely get better. So good luck, and I will see you guys on the next demo.